Today, it seems that whenever any citizen tries to influence government decisions based only on their religious beliefs, someone will inevitably object via the First Amendment. Well, in light of this, it would be good if our President and Congress, as well as many millions of Americans, would listen to the advice and counsel our Founding Fathers gave our country at the time that they wrote the First Amendment. The reason there is so much controversy about the First Amendment is because many people assume the Founding Fathers really didn't hold to a biblical Christian worldview, and therefore they didn't base their ideas of American government on Christian principles. Second, they also wrongly assumed that if our Founding Fathers had based American government on biblical Christianity, it would have destroyed pluralism. Now, both of these assumptions are wrong, and there is ample evidence in the writings and records of our Founding Fathers to prove they're wrong. To begin, David Barton, an expert on the writings, records, and actions of the Founding Fathers, reveals what the Founding Fathers intended when they wrote the First Amendment. Listen.
The phrase separation church and state, where do we find that phrase? Well, on the bicentennial of the Bill of Rights, 2/3 of the nation thought that the phrase separation church and state was found in the First Amendment. And certainly that's what we've heard for years. That's what the court has told us for years. But that phrase exists in no founding documents. The First Amendment very simply says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Very obviously, the phrase separation of church and state does not appear in the First Amendment. But yet we've been told that for decades. Well, if the phrase doesn't appear in the First Amendment, where did it come? Where do we find the phrase? The phrase appeared in a private letter that was written 11 years after the First Amendment. Now, to understand the meaning of the letter, and it was a letter written by Thomas Jefferson, we need to understand what the Founding Fathers intended for the First Amendment. The Founding Fathers, although they did not use the phrase separation church and state, they did have a concept of separation. They said in the writings of Congress, in the journals of Congress, and in their own personal writings that we do not want in America what we had in Great Britain. We don't want the national government making a federal denomination. We're not going to let the government make us all Catholics or Anglicans or any other denomination. Now, we're not going to separate Christian principles, but we're not going to have a national denomination. And when they finished the First Amendment, it was a prohibition on the federal government. It said Congress cannot make any law to establish a religion or a single Christian denomination, as they defined religion in those days. So the intent was very clear. We will not have one national denomination. Now, the Founding Fathers knew what they'd intended to do, and so as they were appointed to courts and as they were placed on courts and on the Supreme Court, when they had opportunity to rule, they very clearly expressed what they already knew. For example, this is a case from 1799. Now, the courts at this time were filled with the same men who had created the documents, who had signed them. And look what the 1799 Supreme Court ruled. It said, by our form of government, the Christian religion is the established religion, but all sects and denominations of Christians are placed on the same equal footing. And that was the intent of the First Amendment, to make sure that we did not have a national denomination, that no one Christian denomination had an unfair advantage over another.